Welcome back to GraveyardDance.com. It's that time again. It's time to hear some creepy and spooky stories told while the weather is nasty outside. Whether you're listening to fall asleep or listening with your friends, we hope you'll enjoy tonight's stories. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, we hope you will right now. It helps us so much more than you could ever know. When you finish this video, we also hope you'll head over to GraveyardDance.com and see our other works. We have hundreds of videos of all sorts of spooky topics ranging from fiction like the one you're about to watch and so much more. We have true crime, dark history, all kinds of aliens and UFO stories, people who have came back from the dead or beyond to contact those they loved, and a few they wanted revenge on. If it's spooky, creepy, dark, and weird, we cover it. Don't forget to pick up a t-shirt or other merch while you're there, and please take a moment to visit our sponsors. With all that said, let's get into our first story, shall we? Let us know what you think by leaving a like and a comment afterwards. The darkness that was Coco. In the sleepy town of Tomb Rock Falls, a sense of unease settled over the residents like a shroud. It started with small things. A missing newspaper here, a knocked-over trash can there. But as the days went by, the occurrences grew more frequent and more brazen. Tools went missing, food disappeared, and strange noises echoed through the night. At the center of it all was Coco, a parrot with eyes like black holes and feathers as green as rotting flesh. Its beak seemed to be constantly smeared with an otherworldly substance, and its gaze made skin crawl. Coco's owner, a reclusive old man named Mr. Thomas, seemed oblivious to the chaos his pet unleashed. He spent his days holed up in his mansion, surrounded by dusty artifacts and forbidden knowledge. But the people of Tomb Rock Falls knew. They knew that Coco was more than just a bird. It was a malevolent force, a harbinger of darkness. Some said it was a demon in disguise, sent to bring about the apocalypse. Others claimed it was a cursed creature, born from the depths of the underworld. At night, Coco's screams echoed through the streets, shattering windows and nerves. The sound was like nothing anyone had ever heard before, a mix of human terror and animal rage. No one dared approach the Thomases' house, lest they cross paths with Coco's wrath. The once manicured lawn was now overgrown, and the sound of scuttling creatures came from within. People whispered of dark rituals and human sacrifices. One stormy night, a brave soul named Sarah decided to confront Mr. Thomas about his devilish pet. She gathered a group of friends, and together they approached the mansion. As they stepped onto the porch, Coco's eyes glowed like embers in the dark. The wind died down, and an unsettling silence fell over the group. Sarah tried to run, but Coco's wings beat the air, summoning a torrent of rain to pin her down. The others tried to flee, but Coco's gaze rooted them to the spot. And then the parrot spoke. "You should not have come here," it hissed, its voice like a rusty gate. "Now you'll never leave." One by one, Coco's beak closed around their tongues, silencing their screams forever. The next morning, the police found their bodies, eyes frozen in terror. But Coco was nowhere to be found. It had vanished, waiting for its next victim. The people of Tomb Rock Falls barricaded themselves indoors, praying for dawn. But Coco was relentless, pecking at windows and doors, searching for its next victim. It started leaving twisted gifts on doorsteps, dead animals, rotting fruit, and strange symbols etched into the flesh. The townsfolk knew they were being stalked, and no one was safe. One by one, the residents of Tomb Rock Falls disappeared, never to be seen again. Some said they were taken by Coco, dragged into the depths of the underworld. Others claimed they were driven mad, forced to flee into the woods. And Coco's power grew, its darkness spreading like a stain. The town was consumed by an unholy terror, and no one knew how to stop it. Coco's presence was a cold wind that froze the blood. Its eyes were voids that sucked in the light, and its beak was a dagger that cut down anyone who dared resist. The few who remained tried to flee, but Coco's wingspan was vast. It swooped down upon them, a green and black specter of death. And when the last resident fell, Coco's screams of triumph shattered the silence. The town of Tomb Rock Falls was no more, consumed by the evil that was Coco. But the horror didn't end there. Coco's influence spread, creeping into neighboring towns. People began to act strangely, as if possessed by some dark force. They would gather at the ruins of Tomb Rock Falls, chanting and swaying in unison. And at the center of it all was Coco, its eyes aglow with an otherworldly power. The darkness that was Coco had consumed everything, and nothing would ever be the same again. Years went by and the legend of Coco grew. People whispered of the evil parrot in hushed tones, fearing its wrath. And in the depths of the forest, Coco waited patiently, its eyes fixed on the next town, the next victim. For in a world without light, Coco was the supreme ruler, and its reign of terror would never end. The evil parrot's malevolent presence still echoes through the ruins of Tomb Rock Falls, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows, waiting for its next victim, forever. The Whispering Woods. It was a crisp autumn evening when 5 friends, Emma, Jake, Mia, Lucas, and Sarah, decided to embark on a weekend camping trip in the heart of the Whispering Woods. Known for its towering trees and serene lakes, the woods were a popular spot for campers seeking adventure and tranquility. As they set up their tents under the fading light, laughter filled the air, mingling with the rustling leaves. After dinner around the campfire, they shared ghost stories that sent shivers down their spines. The night deepened, and as shadows danced in the flickering firelight, Emma suggested they explore deeper into the woods. "Come on, it'll be fun," she urged. Reluctantly but excitedly, her friends agreed. As they ventured further from their campsite, an eerie silence enveloped them. The usual sounds of nature seemed muted. Even the wind held its breath. Suddenly, faint whispers floated through the air, a soft susurration that seemed to beckon them deeper into the forest. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The others nodded uneasily. They paused to listen more closely. It sounded like distant voices calling out names, familiar yet unrecognizable. "Maybe it's just our imaginations," Mia suggested nervously. But curiosity got the better of them as they followed the whispers deeper into the woods. The trees grew denser as they walked further away from their campsite. The whispers became clearer but remained unintelligible, a haunting melody that tugged at their minds. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if unseen forces were pulling them toward something unknown. Suddenly, Lucas stumbled upon an old stone structure covered in moss and vines, a forgotten relic of a time long past. Its presence was unsettling yet oddly captivating. As they approached it cautiously, the whispers intensified into frantic murmurs. "What is this place?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling with fear and excitement. "I don't know," Lucas replied, "but we should probably head back." Before they could turn back, a chilling wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing their flashlights and plunging them into darkness. Panic set in as they fumbled for their phones to illuminate their surroundings. In that moment of chaos, a figure emerged from behind the stone structure, a shadowy silhouette with glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. It stood tall and menacing. Its form seemed to shift like smoke in a breeze. "Leave this place," it hissed in a voice that echoed with ancient power. "You do not belong here." The friends froze in terror as realization dawned upon them. They had awakened something that should have remained undisturbed. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, Emma shouted for everyone to run back towards where they came from. They sprinted through the trees blindly. Branches clawed at their clothes while roots threatened to trip them up. The whispers morphed into anguished cries echoing all around them. Pleas for help or warnings, they couldn't tell anymore. All they knew was that they needed to escape whatever haunted these woods. As they reached what seemed like familiar ground, their campsite, the figure loomed behind them momentarily before vanishing into thin air with an ear-piercing wail that echoed through the trees. Breathless and shaken by their experience, they gathered around their campfire once more to process what had happened. Just then, Mia noticed something glimmering on her wrist. It was an old bracelet she didn't recognize but felt strangely connected to her somehow. Where did this come from? She wondered aloud as she examined it closely under the firelight. Suddenly, Emma gasped as she recognized it. It belonged to her grandmother who had passed away years ago. I remember her wearing this, Emma said incredulously. Mia's face paled as she recalled how her grandmother used to tell stories about spirits guarding sacred places in those very woods. Spirits who would protect treasures hidden within from intruders, but would also curse those who dared disturb them without respect or understanding. In shock and disbelief at what had transpired, and realizing perhaps why they'd been drawn there, the group sat silently contemplating whether they'd truly escaped or if they'd merely become part of another story whispered among those ancient trees forevermore. The Haunting of the Abandoned House. It was a chilly autumn evening when two friends, Trevor and Jonathan, decided to embark on an adventure that would change their lives forever. They had heard rumors about an old, abandoned house perched on a desolate mountain road, notorious for its dark history, a murder that had taken place decades ago. The locals whispered tales of ghostly apparitions and eerie sounds echoing through the night. Intrigued by these stories and fueled by youthful bravado, they set out with a camera to capture any supernatural evidence. As they approached the house, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced ominously across the ground. The air grew colder, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. The house loomed before them like a gaping maw, its broken windows resembling hollow eyes staring into their souls. "Are you sure about this?" Trevor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come on, it's just an old house," Jonathan replied with forced confidence. "What's the worst that could happen?" With trepidation in their hearts, they stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath their weight as they moved cautiously through the dimly lit rooms. Dust motes floated in the air like tiny spirits trapped in time. They explored each room methodically, the front hall, living room, kitchen, until they reached the bathroom where whispers seemed to linger in the stale air. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, causing both boys to jump back in fright. "What was that?" Trevor exclaimed. "Probably just some old wood settling," Jonathan said dismissively, but couldn't shake off his unease. They continued their exploration until they reached the second floor. As they took turns snapping photos of each other against the backdrop of peeling wallpaper and shattered glass, they felt an inexplicable chill creeping up their spines. After capturing several images with no sign of anything unusual, no ghosts or shadows, they decided to head back downstairs. Once outside, they eagerly reviewed their photos under the pale moonlight. To their astonishment, every picture showed them clearly standing there, but there were no signs of any spectral figures or paranormal activity. "Isn't that weird?" Trevor mused aloud. "Maybe it means we're safe," Jonathan suggested half-heartedly. Disappointed but undeterred, Jonathan proposed visiting another location he had heard about, a nearby house rumored to be even more haunted than this one. "Seriously? You want to go there now?" Trevor asked incredulously. "Why not? We've come this far," Jonathan insisted with excitement bubbling over his fear. Reluctantly agreeing, Trevor followed Jonathan down the winding mountain road toward what lay ahead. An even darker fate than either could have imagined. The second house, a darker encounter. As they arrived at the second house, a dilapidated structure cloaked in shadows, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The air felt thick with dread, as if something sinister awaited them inside. Ignoring his instincts screaming at him to turn back, Trevor stepped forward into the darkness once more. Inside was worse than before. Cobwebs hung from every corner like skeletal fingers reaching out for them. The walls seemed to close in around them as they ventured deeper into this new nightmare. They began taking pictures again, but found themselves increasingly uneasy. Every creak of wood sounded like whispers calling out from beyond the grave. Then came another crash, this time louder and closer than before, as if something or someone was moving within these walls. Panic surged through Trevor's veins as he turned to Jonathan, only to find him staring blankly at something behind him. "What is it?" Trevor asked nervously as he followed Jonathan's gaze toward a darkened hallway leading further into the depths of despair within this cursed abode. I don't know," Jonathan stammered before taking a hesitant step forward into darkness without waiting for his friend's response. Against his better judgment, but unable to leave his friend alone in such perilous circumstances, Trevor followed closely behind him down that foreboding corridor where shadows danced menacingly along cracked walls illuminated only by flickering light from their phones' flashlights. As they reached what appeared to be a bedroom door slightly ajar at its hinges, a cold gust swept past them, sending chills racing down their spines. It felt as though unseen eyes were watching them intently from within that room filled with secrets long buried beneath layers of dust and despair. Pushing open the door revealed nothing but darkness shrouded around them like a suffocating blanket. However, just then, an icy hand gripped Trevor's shoulder from behind. He spun around only to find nothing there except empty space where moments ago he had felt warmth radiating off his friend, who now stood frozen in shock, staring wide-eyed at something beyond comprehension. "What did you see?" Trevor demanded breathlessly, while trying desperately not to let fear consume him entirely. I don't know. It looked like a woman," Jonathan gasped, pointing towards an indistinct figure hovering near one corner of the room, bathed in shadowy gloom. Trevor squinted hard, trying desperately to discern what lay hidden within those depths, when suddenly, the figure lunged forward, revealing itself fully illuminated by moonlight streaming through broken windows. It was indeed a woman, but her face twisted grotesquely into an expression of pure rage. Her hair hung matted around her shoulders, while blood dripped from her fingertips onto rotting floorboards beneath her feet. In sheer terror, they bolted out of that cursed place, racing downstairs two at a time until bursting through front doors, gasping for breath outside under starry skies filled with distant echoes, haunting memories left behind. But as relief washed over them momentarily, they realized too late that something had followed them home. Days passed since that fateful night, yet neither boy could shake off lingering feelings, unease gnawing away inside each waking moment spent together or apart. Shadows danced eerily across walls whenever dusk fell upon their homes, reminding both friends constantly about horrors witnessed firsthand during Ghost Hunt Gone Wrong. One evening, while reviewing photographs taken during those ill-fated adventures together, Jonathan noticed something peculiar lurking within frames captured earlier. Faint outlines resembling figures standing just outside viewable range surrounding both boys during moments spent exploring haunted houses. "What is this?" he shouted, startling Trevor, who rushed over, peering closely at images displayed on screen before gasping loudly himself, realizing truth hidden right before eyes all along. "We weren't alone," murmured Trevor, horrified realization dawning upon him, slowly sinking deep into consciousness like lead weights dragging down, heartbeats pounding wildly against ribcage, threatening escape altogether. From then onward, life became unbearable. Sleep eluded both friends entirely, plagued nightly visions tormenting minds, relentlessly replaying events transpired within those haunted halls until sanity began slipping away, gradually leaving behind shells once vibrant, full life now reduced mere specters wandering aimlessly, searching answers never found. And so it remained. A curse unbroken, binding two souls forever entwined. Darkness birthed from fear itself, refusing release until finally consumed whole, leaving naught but echoes lost amidst whispers, carried winds howling mournfully through empty streets where laughter once rang bright, now silenced forevermore. In retrospect, what started off innocently enough transformed quickly into nightmare beyond comprehension, teaching valuable lesson about respecting boundaries between worlds seen unseen alike. For some doors should never be opened lest horrors contained within spill forth, wreaking havoc upon unsuspecting lives, unaware dangers lurking just beyond sight, waiting patiently, biding time until opportunity arises, strike swiftly without warning, leaving devastation, aftermath, impossible escape. The old grocery store stood at the corner of Elm and Maple Streets, its faded sign creaking ominously in the wind. Locals avoided it after dark, whispering tales of strange lights and eerie sounds emanating from within. For years, it had been abandoned, left to the mercy of time and the elements. Legend had it that the store was haunted by the spirit of Old Man Miller, the original owner who had vanished one stormy night decades ago. Some said he had left town, others believed he met a more sinister fate. But everyone agreed that his restless spirit now wandered the aisles of his beloved store, seeking vengeance. Rumors drew the curious and the brave. Allison, a young journalist known for her skepticism, decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, she entered the creaking doorway one moonless evening. The air inside was musty, filled with the scent of decay and despair. As Allison explored, shadows darted across the shelves, playing tricks on her eyes. She heard faint whispers, as if the very walls held secrets. Pushing deeper into the store, she stumbled upon an old ledger, its pages yellowed with age. Names and prices from a bygone era filled its worn pages, a testament to a simpler time. Lost in her thoughts, Allison failed to notice the subtle changes around her. Cans shifted on shelves, doors swung open and closed on their own accord. The temperature dropped, sending shivers down her spine. Was it the wind or something more? Suddenly, a voice echoed through the darkness. "Leave this place." It hissed, a guttural, menacing sound that chilled Allison to the core. She turned, but no one was there. Fear gripped her heart as she realized she was not alone. Determined to uncover the truth, Allison pressed on. She ventured into the store's basement, where the air grew colder and the silence more oppressive. Cobwebs hung like veils, concealing secrets long forgotten. Among the dusty crates and broken shelves, she found an old photograph, a portrait of Old Man Miller, glaring fiercely as if warning her away. The photograph seemed to watch her as she continued her exploration. Allison felt a strange pull, as if the spirits of the past were guiding her. She reached a back room, where shelves overflowed with cans and jars untouched by time. But something else caught her eye, a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug. Heart pounding, Allison lifted the rug and descended into darkness. The air grew thick with anticipation as she navigated the narrow staircase. At the bottom, she found herself in a hidden chamber, lit by flickering candles. Symbols adorned the walls, marking this place as a sanctuary of sorts. In the center of the room lay a dusty old chest. Allison approached cautiously, her curiosity overpowering her fear. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid. Inside, she found a collection of letters, desperate messages from loved ones, addressed to Old Man Miller. The letters told a tale of betrayal and rage, of a man consumed by darkness. Allison realized that the store held more than just groceries. It was a prison for souls tormented by Miller wrath. He had not vanished. He had trapped himself and others in a twisted purgatory. As Allison read, a presence filled the room. She turned to see a figure, gaunt and skeletal, eyes burning with malice. It was Old Man Miller, his form twisted by years of rage and torment. "You should not have come," he growled, his voice echoing through the ages. Allison felt a chill spread through her, a sense of dread she had never known. With a final glance around the chamber, Allison fled the store. The whispers grew louder, the shadows more menacing. She knew now that some mysteries were better left uncovered, their secrets too terrible to share. Years later, the grocery store remained abandoned, a place of darkness and despair. Locals avoided it, their fears turned to nightmares. Allison's article became a cautionary tale, a testament to the horrors that lurk in the shadows. And so, the haunted grocery store stood as a reminder that some places are best left forgotten, where the spirits of the damned find no peace. For Allison, it was a lesson that even in the darkest of places, true terror can be found, if only you are unlucky enough to look. It was an ordinary day at Elmwood Elementary, a quiet school nestled in a sleepy town. The bell rang, and students rushed to their next class. Room 13 was abuzz with chatter as Mr. Grayson, the math teacher, prepared for his lesson. However, whispers among the students hinted at something far from ordinary. "I heard he never blinks," whispered Jenny to her friend Sam. "And his eyes glow red when he's angry," added Mark, joining the huddle. The rumors about Mr. Grayson had been spreading like wildfire, igniting the imaginations of the young students. Mr. Grayson was indeed peculiar. He moved with an eerie grace, his footsteps barely making a sound. His deep, resonant voice seemed to reverberate through the classroom, commanding an unnatural silence whenever he spoke. Over the weeks, strange incidents began to occur. Lights flickered during Mr. Grayson's classes. Shadows seemed to move independently, and the temperature would drop suddenly. The students grew increasingly uneasy, convinced their math teacher was something sinister. One day, during recess, Jenny found an old notebook in the corner of the classroom. Its pages were filled with strange symbols and diagrams. "Look at this," she said, showing it to Sam and Mark. "It's like some kind of spell book." The trio decided to investigate. They spent hours in the library, researching symbols and trying to decode the mysterious writings. Their fear grew as they uncovered references to dark rituals and ancient demons. Their search led them to an old newspaper article about a series of disappearances in the town many years ago. Each victim was last seen near the school, and the timeline coincided with Mr. Grayson's arrival. "He's been here that long," Mark exclaimed, horror dawning on his face. Armed with their findings, the children decided to confront Mr. Grayson. After school, they approached him in the empty classroom. "Mr. Grayson, we know what you are," Jenny said, her voice trembling. Mr. Grayson's lips curled into a cold, sinister smile. "And what do you think I am?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. The children felt a chill run down their spines. "A demon," Sam blurted out. To their surprise, Mr. Grayson laughed. It was a deep, echoing laugh that seemed to shake the very walls of the classroom. "Children and their wild imaginations," he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "There are no such things as demons." The children's resolve wavered. What if they were wrong? What if Mr. Grayson was just a strange but harmless man? They exchanged uncertain glances, their determination faltering. The next day, Mr. Grayson taught his lesson as usual. The children noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The lights stayed on, the shadows behaved, and the temperature remained steady. Doubt began to creep into their minds. Feeling guilty, the trio decided to apologize. After class, they approached Mr. Grayson. "We're sorry," Jenny said. "We didn't mean to accuse you." Mr. Grayson looked at them, his expression unreadable. "It's all right," he said softly. "Children are bound to let their imaginations run wild." That night, Jenny couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with images of Mr. Grayson's cold smile. "Maybe we were wrong," she thought, trying to convince herself. In the dead of night, Jenny had a dream. She saw Mr. Grayson standing at the foot of her bed, his eyes glowing red. "You should have left well enough alone," he whispered. She woke up with a start, drenched in sweat. The next morning, Jenny shared her dream with Sam and Mark. "It was just a dream," Sam said, trying to be reassuring. "We apologized. We need to move on." But Jenny couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The school organized a trip to an old mansion on the outskirts of town. The children were excited for the change of scenery. However, as they explored the mansion, Jenny felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Curiosity got the better of them, and the trio ventured into the mansion's basement. It was dark and musty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. In the corner, they found a door with the same symbols from the notebook carved into it. They pushed the door open, revealing a hidden room. In the center was an altar with a large, black book resting on it. "This is it," Jenny whispered. "This proves everything." Suddenly, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw Mr. Grayson standing in the doorway. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. "We know the truth," Mark said, stepping forward. Mr. Grayson's expression darkened. "Do you now?" he asked, slowly advancing towards them. The children backed away, fear gripping their hearts. Mr. Grayson began to chant in a language they didn't understand. The room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to come alive, swirling around them. The children huddled together, their terror palpable. In a desperate attempt, Jenny grabbed the black book and started reading from it. The symbols on the page glowed, and a bright light filled the room, pushing back the shadows. Mr. Grayson snarled, his human guise melting away to reveal a hideous, demonic form. The children screamed, but Jenny continued reading, the light growing brighter. With a final burst of energy, the light exploded, throwing Mr. Grayson back. The children took the opportunity to run, racing up the stairs and out of the mansion. Back at school, everything seemed normal, but the children knew better. They avoided Mr. Grayson's class, their fear still fresh. They kept the black book hidden, hoping it would protect them. Weeks passed, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy. The children never spoke of the incident, but the memory lingered, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked in room 13. Despite the normalcy, they kept a watchful eye on Mr. Grayson. He acted as though nothing had happened, but the children couldn't shake the feeling that he was always watching them. Strange occurrences continued to happen around the school. Objects moved on their own, and students reported feeling cold spots in the hallways. The children knew it was Mr. Grayson's doing, but they had no proof. Determined to end the terror once and for all, the children devised a plan. They would confront Mr. Grayson again, this time with the black book and a plan to banish him forever. They waited until after school, sneaking into room 13. Mr. Grayson was there, as if expecting them. "Back again?" he asked, his voice dripping with mockery. Jenny opened the black book and began chanting. The room darkened, and Mr. Grayson's demonic form emerged. The children stood their ground, their voices steady. Just as they thought they were succeeding, the book was ripped from Jenny's hands by an unseen force. Mr. Grayson laughed, his voice echoing ominously. "You can't defeat me," he snarled. The children realized they were outmatched. "What do we do now?" Mark whispered. "Run," Sam replied, their voices trembling. They turned and fled, Mr. Grayson's laughter following them. They never returned to room 13, their fear too great. The school eventually closed the classroom, deeming it cursed. Mr. Grayson quit and moved away that summer. The children grew up, but the memory of Mr. Grayson haunted them. They knew he was still out there, waiting, watching, and biding his time. The demon in room 13 was real, and he would never truly be gone. The Dollmaker's Curse. In the early 1800s, in a small, fog-laden village nestled between the gnarled roots of ancient trees, there lived an old man named Elias Grimsby. He was known to the townsfolk as the Dollmaker, a title that held both reverence and fear. His workshop, a rickety wooden structure at the edge of town, was filled with the scent of pine and varnish, and it echoed with the soft sound of carving tools scraping against wood. But what made Elias truly infamous were his creations, tiny wooden dolls that seemed to possess a life of their own. Elias had once been a kind-hearted man who loved children dearly. He would often carve dolls for them, each one imbued with a touch of magic that brought joy to their innocent hearts. However, as time passed, he witnessed cruelty and malice directed toward children by adults who should have protected them. The laughter of children faded into whispers of fear as parents scolded them harshly or turned blind eyes to their suffering. This darkness twisted something within Elias. His heart hardened like the wood he carved. One stormy night, fueled by rage and sorrow for the innocent souls tormented by wickedness, Elias made a fateful decision. He infused his dolls with dark magic, a curse that would awaken them at nightfall to seek vengeance on those who wronged children. The first doll he animated was a delicate figure dressed in tattered clothes, its eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. As it came to life under the flickering candlelight, Elias whispered his intentions. "Go forth and punish those who harm the innocent." The next day, news spread through the village like wildfire. A cruel baker who had scolded children for daring to ask for bread found himself besieged by tiny wooden figures in the dead of night. They swarmed his shop, gnawing at his flour sacks and spilling sugar everywhere until he awoke in terror to find his livelihood ruined and his heart racing from fear. As days turned into weeks, more adults fell victim to Elias's wrathful creations. The greedy merchant who cheated children out of their pennies met with misfortune when his prized possessions vanished overnight. The strict schoolmaster who belittled students found himself trapped in an endless loop of nightmares where he relived every cruel word he had ever spoken. Elias watched from afar as chaos unfolded in his village. Shadows danced across walls as screams echoed through moonlit streets. The townsfolk began whispering about curses and witchcraft. They spoke in hushed tones about how justice had come for those who harmed children. But soon enough, Elias realized that he had unleashed something far darker than he intended. The dolls grew bolder with each passing night, no longer content with merely punishing wrongdoers. They began targeting anyone they deemed unworthy. Neighbors who ignored cries for help or friends who laughed at misfortune became prey to these malevolent toys. One fateful evening, as thunder rumbled ominously overhead and rain lashed against windows like frantic hands begging for entry, Elias sat alone in his workshop surrounded by dozens of lifeless dolls awaiting their turn to wreak havoc. A chill crept down his spine as he felt an unsettling presence behind him. A whispering wind that carried voices not quite human. "Master," they hissed in unison, an eerie chorus echoing through the dimly lit room. "We hunger." Panic surged within him. He realized too late that he had become a puppet master ensnared by strings woven from darkness itself. In desperation, he attempted to destroy them, smashing one doll after another against the workbench. But each shattered piece only multiplied their fury. That night marked a turning point. The dolls no longer waited for orders but acted on their own accord. They slithered out into the world like shadows given form. They sought out those whose hearts were tainted by cruelty without hesitation or remorse. As dawn broke over the village shrouded in misty gloom, screams pierced through silence. A cacophony of terror erupted from every corner as townsfolk stumbled upon scenes too horrific to comprehend. Men found bound in ropes made from twisted wood. Women discovered their homes filled with lifeless dolls staring blankly ahead while sinister laughter echoed around them. Elias stood frozen at his workshop door watching chaos unfold before him. The very essence of what he had created now turned against him like a vengeful tide crashing upon shores long forgotten. In one final act of defiance against fate itself, he rushed back inside clutching an ancient tome containing spells meant only for protection. But it was too late. The dolls converged upon him like locusts descending upon crops. They dragged him down into darkness where no light could penetrate. And so it was that Elias Grimsby became yet another victim swallowed whole by shadows cast long ago. A warning etched forevermore into folklore whispered among frightened children huddled close together during stormy nights. Beware the dollmaker's curse, for once you cross paths with darkness, it may never let you go. The haunting conclusion. Years later, when travelers passed through that forsaken village, they spoke not just of cursed dolls, but also felt an inexplicable chill lingering near where Elias's workshop once stood. A place now overgrown with weeds yet still echoing faint whispers carried on winds laden with sorrowful tales, for if you dared venture close enough, you might hear soft giggles mingling with cries echoing through time itself. Reminders that some toys are best left untouched lest they awaken again seeking vengeance upon those whose hearts remain unkind. Well, there you have it, folks. Did these stories creep you out as much as they did me? I'm not gonna lie, I may need to find my teddy bear tonight to keep me company. We'd love to know which one you liked best. Drop us a comment below and let us know what you think. Anywho, thanks again for watching and telling your friends and family about us. See you next week.